All right. What's going on, guys? Yeah, it's just going to be me. I figured, I wanted to do a video today about this, but I wasn't really sure in the best manner to go about it. So I figured I'd just jump into a hangout myself and start talking about some of these things um, from the video yesterday. Now, a lot of people in the comments of the video, a lot of people, tweeted at me, a lot of people DM'd me saying that I overreacted, and some people obviously agreed with my video, but a lot of people said I overreacted and that Xbox is going to have a bright future, and I just got to give Phil time and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I wanted to talk about that and then address some of those things because, look, I'm an Xbox gamer. You all know that, right? I love Xbox probably more than most people. It's the only console I've owned for the past 12 years, right? So the fact that I'm even considering purchasing a PlayStation to fulfill a need is weird to me because normally everything is provided for me through Xbox, and granted, most of that is third-party stuff. And this year is a little bit light on some of the games I want to play, right? But let's look at what Phil's saying on the large story-driven single-player games, right? And you guys know that I am a single-player story kind of guy. Like, those are the type of games that I crave, I desire to play, even though I enjoy playing multiplayer with my friends. I have 600 hours in Destiny 1. I have 200 some hours in Rainbow Six Siege. I have like 60, 70 hours in Overwatch. Those games don't, I don't know, they just don't do it for me in ways that like BioShock Infinite did, or Inside, or Half-Life. I don't know, like my memories of gaming are those really great single-player experiences, even though multiplayer is something I still enjoy. Now, let's take his quote, for example, where he said that the audience for those big story-driven games, he says they are large because they are, but they're not as consistent. Zelda and Horizon Zero Dawn come out and they do well, but they don't have the same impact they used to have because the big service-based games are capturing a lot of the audience. Look, he's talking about like the business perspective of that, right? Like, I get where he's coming from, and he's 100% correct. Games nowadays, they come out, and if they're single player only, people buy them, right? And they play them one time, two times, hardly three times, but that's it. It's over, right? It's done and over with. Your experience with the game is done. You're not spending any more money on the game. It's over. And I think a lot of people, they don't like to hear that from a business executive, and that's what Phil is. I mean, he is in charge of the whole thing, essentially, right? So he's talking about, as the head of Xbox, those type of games. Like, he wants those type of games, like Overwatch, like Rainbow Six Siege, those type of stuff. They're basically sucking, those are the games that people play, and they play for a year. Rainbow Six Siege, if you guys remember, came out in 2005, or 2015, and was like number 5 in MPD last year. It's a game that is constantly in the top 10 of most played, and like they spend all the money on the renown and all that stuff. Like, those games, people play for a long period of time. Single player games are short experiences. And that's what Phil's talking about. Like, I completely understood his, talking point. Like, I get it. Like, I get it from a business perspective that the multiplayer games as a service thing is basically the future of gaming. Like, I completely get it. I completely understand his point, because I got plenty of people who DM'd me saying that, Rand, you didn't get the point of his message and what he was talking about. And I think I clearly did. I clearly did. I get it. I've talked to Phil enough to know what he thinks on a lot of different things. So from a business perspective, from that Xbox, I get that comment, and that wasn't what I was taking issue with. Like, I understand it. You're the head of Xbox. You got to do what's best for your Xbox brand. But a lot of people aren't really where this should concern a lot of people is when you read in between the lines. Here you have Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, the one who approves all decisions at the company, whether a game gets funded or whether it doesn't get funded. And he's basically telling you that, and not in a roundabout way, that large single-player games don't have the effect that they used to, right? That these huge games as a service games drive the industry forward. Xbox. So if he's the head of Xbox and he's telling you that those games as a service games are driving the industry forward, is it a leap of logic to envision a scenario where Xbox goes along that route and makes games as a games of a service because the head of the division thinks that is the direction they are moving in, right? Is that too much of a leap of logic? Is that an overreaction to his comments? Like, I mean, like I said, I completely get where he's coming from a business perspective. I'm just trying to look into the future about what this potentially could mean for Xbox. And I mean, let's not mince any words here, man. Like, even though I've enjoyed a lot of the single player games that Xbox has delivered this gen, Rise, Sunset Overdrive, Quantum Break. Quantum Break was one of my favorite games last year. I gave it a 9 out of 10. I loved that game. Loved it. I wouldn't necessarily call it a strong narrative-driven game, but it's a fun game. Those are the type of games that I enjoy. Games like Quantum Break, games like Rise. And nobody's going to say that Rise is like a strong single-player game, narrative game like Uncharted. Nobody's saying that, right? But even though Rise has a co-op element to it, right? And even though even Sunset Overdrive that has a multiplayer element to it, you wouldn't necessarily call those games multiplayer focused. Those games are strictly single player. Now the problem is that Xbox doesn't have the user base to make those games successful in the way that Sony has that same user base that can make those games successful. So you put out Rise, you put out Recore, you put out all these single-player games at the beginning of the gen, and what happens? People bought them, but not in large enough quantities for them to make a sequel. And I know people, because I got DM'd this, Aaron, Quantum Break was successful, right? Quantum Break was successful. Aaron Greenberg said it was successful. If it was so successful, there would be a sequel. Remedy wouldn't be working on 2 games and not be working with Microsoft anymore. The game wasn't successful. It was a disaster, right? Let's see. So, all right. Well, let me get to, because I see some of the people in chat saying that some people can't hear me. I'm pretty sure I'm live. Yeah, I am. I'm live. Just say in chat if you guys can hear me, and I'll continue on, because I don't want to go into a discussion of this stuff if nobody can hear me, because I have seen a few people say, is Rand here? But I'm here. I am here. Okay, good. All right. De Niro says we're live, so that's good. All right. The problem is, even though those games had a multiplayer component, they were largely based on the single-player element of it, and not a lot of people bought those games in excess of it being successful, so we don't get a sequel to it, right? And it's not a leap of logic to think that Phil and the brass over at Xbox are thinking, hey, we've given these gamers all these games, right? All these games, and none of them did well. None of them did well. None of them sold well enough to get a sequel. Now I see Mikey Byers here trolling me, so this is going to be interesting. None of them sold well enough to get a sequel. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for me to think that moving forward, Xbox will deliver more multiplayer-focused experiences like Sea of Thieves, or like even State of Decay 2, which is basically a co-op experience, or Crackdown, which is basically another co-op experiences, right? And while those are fun, to me, and playing with my friends, I kind of crave those strictly single player experiences, the Rise and the games like that. And maybe it's me reading in between the lines of Phil's comments a little bit too much, but I have this sinking suspicion that the games that I particularly enjoy to play aren't going to be found by they aren't going to be made by Xbox moving forward. Sure, we'll still get Halo 6, and Halo is my favorite franchise, and it will have a great campaign. I just saw the news about how it's going to feature a campaign based around just Master Chief. And that's great to me. That is absolutely great to me because I love Halo, and Halo's my jam. And I'm sure Gears of War 5, whenever that comes out, will have a strong campaign. But it's basically the campaign is in service to the multiplayer this time around, right? Because the multiplayer has that the element of the rec packs and the gear packs and all that stuff where they want the engagement over the course of a year and 2 years. They don't want a game to come out like a single player game and people stop playing after a year. I mean, that's what Phil was talking about. But I don't think it's an overreaction to assume that since he's the head of Xbox, that the games he's going to devote a lot of money towards are type of games that I particularly don't have any interest in. Is that an overreaction? I mean, I know E3 is coming around and people tell me to wait to E3, wait to E3. We'll get a better sense of what Xbox's future looks like. And look, just like everybody else, I'm excited for Scorpio. My backlog, I have a ton of games on Xbox that are going to be made better by Scorpio, right? And I do play a lot of third-party games because a lot of third-party games come out all the time. And there are a lot of them. And Scorpio will be the best place to play those games. So it's I guess it's my desire to have a game on the level of Uncharted or Fallout or Elder Scrolls, those huge single player experiences, but I want one of them made from Xbox's studios, right? Like a Fable, but like a huge Fable RPG or something along those lines. But I just have this sinking suspicion, this feeling that the games that Xbox is building, that they're handcrafting for their studios, are this games as a service, because that's what Phil sees as driving the industry forward. He even talks about like that those games, they're good, but they're difficult. They become more rare because it's a difficult business decision for those teams because you're fighting into more headwind. And when he says headwind, he's talking about Overwatch. He's talking about Rainbow Six. He's talking about the games of services who basically have retained their users and picked up more as time goes. And when a single player game comes out, someone just plays it for a couple days and then never plays it again. They have no more interaction with it. Look, it's a tough situation for Phil to be in, right? He says one thing, people jump on him for that. He says something else, people jump on him for that. And that's the one reason I do like Phil. He speaks his mind. He's a gamer. It is just a weird situation. Like, I like Xbox a lot, and you guys all know this. And I see this future because of this games as a service stuff, the stuff that Phil sees as driving the industry forward. As like, all right, if you're sitting down and building the future of Xbox and the games that you want, especially with the user base that didn't support any of their other games in the first place, because that's just the truth. Why would you go back and build any of those single player focused games when they didn't buy them before? And what's to say they'll buy them now? So you go with the industry trends. You build those big those big multiplayer experience games, and hopefully they catch on, like Sea of Thieves. I can't talk about Sea of Thieves because I've played it, but games like that, the games that I don't know. Maybe I expect a lot out of Xbox. The problem is, Rand, that you're jumping on every time he speaks. No, I don't jump on him for every time he speaks. I'm just looking at it from my perspective. Look, I'm not playing a character, right? Like, even though this is for entertainment and I hope it entertains you guys, like, this is just my thoughts just spewed out. I really didn't even prep this video. It was just kind of like I wanted to talk and just kind of get over what I was thinking when I made that video. And when I talk to people like Tim Dog about this, or even my buddies like Magic or DOA, they're always like, well, E3 is right around the corner. Let's see what they got up their sleeves. Just give them the benefit of the doubt. And I am giving them the benefit of the doubt. I've been giving them the benefit of the doubt for a long time. And I am going to wait to E3. I'm excited to see what it shows you. I just have this feeling that what they're going to show is Scorpio and how it's the best place to play third-party games. Maybe Ori 2, which would absolutely be killer because Ori is my favorite game of the generation. A Halo 6 teaser, a bunch of third-party games on stage, and a bunch of announced first-party games that they have currently. I don't really think we're going to get a lot into the future because Phil's even talked about, he wants to show games at the right time. So when that happens, I don't know. It saddens me, I guess, because when that happens, okay, look, and trust me, I want to be wrong. I completely want to be wrong. I would love for me to just a bit like we look back after E3 and, Phil announces 5 new huge Xbox IPs and they blow the roof down. I would love to be wrong. Freaking love to be wrong about this. Please. Prove me wrong. Make me wrong. Mike, make me wrong. Just tell me that I'm completely wrong here and that all these games that I want, all these games that people want from, that like Zelda and Horizon, they're coming to Xbox. These great, grand single-player experiences. I would love to be wrong. Nothing would give me more pleasure to make a video after E3 and be like, man, I completely screwed the pooch. I was wrong on so many levels. Thank God I was wrong. Because I don't want to be right. I don't want to be right. Because when I look at the games that Microsoft could possibly put out this, announced at E3, it's like, what the games are coming, what games everybody's making at each one of those studios, right? 343 is making Halo 6, and Coalition's making Gears 5, and Rare's on Sea of Thieves. Undead Labs is working on State of Decay. Turn 10's on Forza 7. Playground Games, assuming, is on Forza Horizon 4. You can point to each one of Microsoft studios, right? Just each one of their studios, and the games that they're making. They take a long time to make, right? So it's like, where are these big games coming from? Is Microsoft going to hire a second party to build the game like they did with ReCore? But if they do that, is the game going to be any good? Because ReCore didn't really hit it out with the critics. I don't know. I mean, do you sign a huge exclusive from a third-party game that, even though Phil said he doesn't like doing that? That's the question I'm asking him. I'm literally sitting here, even though I want them to prove me wrong and say, Rand, here are 5 games that you want, single-player focused, even with the multiplayer, because I don't mind the games that have multiplayer, but single-player focused, right? Here are those games. But I look at the studios they have, and I look at their history of what they've done, and it's like, I don't see it coming from their own first-party studios. I just don't. And I know people have said to me, hey, well, Rand, 343 could be working on a second game. And while that is possible, nobody's saying it's not possible. History will show you that most of Microsoft studios, even though they may work on multiple projects at a time, even though they're working on multiple products at a time, but they don't, historically, they don't come out. They only ever release one, right? They only ever release one. So as much as I would love to see 343 release Halo 6, as much as I would love to see, them come out with a lock spin-off adventure, right? I just don't think that's going to happen. I mean, and if that's an overreaction to Phil's comments, then so be it. I think I'm being pretty reasonable about all this stuff. I'm just kind of projecting the future based on what Phil thinks is going on in the industry. That's all I'm trying to do here. Just basically saying that. What is the future going to be based on what the head of Xbox sees as the future? And he's basically said, single-player games don't have an impact. And they're not like Sony. Microsoft doesn't have the breadth of users to take risks anymore. because all their risks they've taken this gen, outside of backwards compatibility, which I don't even know if you could classify as a risk. A lot of people wanted 360 games. They haven't done well. They haven't sold well. So it's like, and the one risky game that they did, a JRPG from a Japanese developer, they canceled. So it's like, I don't know, man. Like I said, if Xbox proves me wrong, because I see Warrior saying that, I'm gonna have to get a PlayStation just for I'm just gonna have to get a PlayStation to fulfill those things. I mean, I wanted to get one for a while now, and it might be the time. It might be the time. $200 seems like a right price point to go after. I don't really care about Nintendo at all, one bit. But man, I'm reading the chat here, and some people say that I am still overacting, and some people say that I'm not. And I guess it depends on what you're looking at, right? Like, I mean, trust me, I would absolutely love to be proven wrong, and I'm sure we'll have Jez on. We'll talk about this on Wednesday and stuff. Kenny asks, "Hey Rand, do you think the Xbox is ever going to make a sequel to Sunset Overdrive?" No, I don't think they will. I don't think they will. Other Zinc says I'm wrong about everything. I mean, hey man, like, I know you don't like me, and you're always in here trolling me for all this stuff. I would, like I said, I would love for this video to be completely wrong. And but yeah, I mean, I just wanted to kind of talk about like why, just my thoughts on this stuff. Like, look, is it that much of a stretch to think that Xbox is moving to games as a service? And for a lot of people out there, I don't think it would even matter if they do. People just want exclusive. People want to know the future of Xbox. I think that's one of the big things we're talking about here is we literally don't know any game, like the release dates for any games coming out the rest of the year. We don't know when State of Decay 2 is coming out. We don't know when Sea of Thieves is coming out. We don't know when Crackdown 3 is coming out. And then we don't even know the rest of the games going into next year, while Sony has basically said, here's our entire slate to 2019. Microsoft has taken the opposite approach. They're like, we're holding stuff too close to our chest, right? So, the problem with that is now I'm starting to think, okay, what does Xbox have to show? Are they really trying to surprise people with this surprise? Here's 5 games, guys. Hallelujah. Or is it they're not really have anything to show because they don't really have anything? I mean, like I said, we know all the games that they're working on. Some guy says, "Shut the fuck up and wait till E3." Thank you for that comment. And when you beat single player games, become worthless and boring. I wouldn't say worthless and boring, but I understand what Phil's talking about, because basically there's no more engagement on those games after they're done playing. After you're done playing with them, you're not spending any more money on them. You're not playing it. So like, I get his whole statement. Like, I truly do. Everybody's just saying wait to E3. What PS4 games has a better story than Halo? I don't know, man. I haven't played a PS4 game. I couldn't tell you if any of them are better than any Xbox game or not. I'm just saying, from everything I've seen, it seems like, I don't know, they value single player a little bit more than. And look, Other Zinc, let me say right now, I guarantee you I'm a bigger Halo fan than you are. Guaranteed. And I can also guarantee Maka is a bigger Halo fan than you as well. I probably played more Halo in my life than you played any singular Halo title. So don't come at me with Halo, because Halo is my favorite franchise. I know how big Halo is, but Halo is not what it used to be. Halo is definitely not what it used to be. Yes, respect Rand's opinion, but he worries too much without insider knowledge. Keep your controller batteries half full. Or maybe I'm worrying too much because I have insider knowledge. There's also that. 7 minutes of soft serve. I know Silva likes when I go on these rants. But back to my original point before I had to school somebody about Halo. Kids, they don't know what I know about Halo. I played Halo 2 every single day for a year. Like literally 10 hours a day. 10 hours a day. Red Hood, there in Super Chat, there's a button if you want to donate and say something. It's there if you want to or not, but you know, it's just an option. I don't really, you know, if people want to donate or not, that's up to them. I appreciate it, but it's there. But let's go back to the original point. Now I've lost my track of this stuff because Halo is my favorite franchise, and I played Halo all the time. So others think you can shut up about Halo. Let's see. What was I talking about? See, now you have all Phil's inside now. No, Phil doesn't tell me anything, and neither does Mike. Like I usually hear stuff from other people. So the idea that at E3, because everybody says wait to E3, Rand, wait to E3. But the question is, what happens if E3? What happens if you show up to E3 if Xbox shows up and there's literally nothing besides Halo 6 or Ori 2? And I mean literally nothing. I mean literally nothing new. What if it's just Halo 6, Ori 2, a bunch of third-party games, a bunch of known first-party games, and a section about Scorpio? How would you guys feel? How would you guys react? I think a lot of people would be upset because they want to know what's coming in 2018 outside of Halo. That's my whole point. People know that Halo's coming eventually. People know that Gears of War is coming eventually. Those are staples of the Xbox genre, right? Those are staples. People know that Forza's coming every single year. What people want, what people think when they talk about these games and when PlayStation people say Xbox has those games, is they want new experiences, new IPs that aren't those games, right? That basically aren't the tried and true formula. Well, no, look, I don't have any direct insider information. This isn't about that. It's just conversations I've had with people around in the press and around stuff, and my own kind of just looking at what the studios are doing and just saying, hey, there may not be much. But back to the point about all this stuff is that if Xbox does not sell stuff, what are you going to say then? What are you going to say then, right? People want new experiences, and I understand that people don't necessarily. Oh well, see now I'm rambling, and I'm looking at chat, and it's gotten my mind completely messed up on what my original point was. This is what happens when you try to do a podcast by yourself. Look, all I'm going to say is I would love for Microsoft to come out at E3, be like, here's our vision of the future of Xbox. Show off Halo 6, show off Ori 2, show off all they're going to show off, and then give teases of a bunch of new games that we have no clue about. And everything will be okay. You know, hell, if you got to call up Ted Price and get him to do a Sunset Overdrive 2, then do it. But as of right now, I honestly think this year is going to be a bad year when it comes to new games for Xbox. I really do. I just don't see where the games are coming from. And the games that I think we do see coming, I think are just the tried and true games, right? And I'm not saying that Sony has a whole bunch more, even though they kind of do, but it just pales in comparison. I just see this, like Phil's comments and my overreaction to them is people not seeing the writing on the wall, right? Is Phil says these things, and a lot of people, and myself, I'm obviously guilty of it. I make a 10-minute video about it. I make an 8-minute video about it. But then you can ask Silva or ask any of my friends. I can make a 10-minute video about anything. About anything. I just talk. That's what I do, right? The thing is, most people aren't reading in between the lines of what Phil said. When Phil talks about the games that sell now and the games that are super important and the games that basically dominate the industry are games as a service games. And the games that Microsoft has announced, I mean, Sea of Thieves is a games as a service game. That's just what it is. Rise 1 was not. Sunset Overdrive was not. Recore was not. Those are basic single-player games. Send Worry a link. All right. I will send you a link, Worry. We'll get you in here. If you want to join. Maybe I need somebody else in here to bounce some of my thoughts off of. There we go. All right. If Worry wants to join, he can join, and we can have a conversation about this. And look, there's nothing wrong with games as a service at its core. Like I said, I played a bunch of hours of Overwatch, Destiny, all those different types of games. There's nothing wrong with those games at all. It's just that when your competition is providing a single player based experience that everybody seems to love, whether it's Nintendo and Zelda, whether it's, I don't know, Horizon Zero Dawn or Last of Us, your fans want those experiences as well. But when you're losing and you don't have the backing, you don't have the money coming in like Sony does, because let's not assume for a second Microsoft or Xbox has the whole entirety of the Microsoft coffers, like everything Windows has made, the billions upon billions of dollars at their thing. Phil has a budget that's given to him by his boss. People want those games on their platforms. People want a Horizon Zero Dawn like experience or a Zelda experience on their Xbox. But the problem is, the only way they're getting those type of experiences is if a third party makes those types of experiences. But a third party, most of those third party games, I'm going to say not as good, but then somebody will mention Witcher 3, which is one of the best games ever. But like the Zelda game targets targets Nintendo's platform extremely well. That's what it does. And same thing with Horizon Zero Dawn. It's strictly made for PlayStation. I want a game like that is strictly made for Xbox, that takes advantages of all of Xbox has to offer, whether it's Xbox Live, whether it's the power of Scorpio, right? Something like that. Something that I can look forward to, because as much as I love Halo 6, let's not mince words, guys. Or much as I love Halo, Halo is old. Halo is long in the tooth, right? Same thing with Gears of War. I have friends, like one of them in the chat right now, Ben, loved Gears, but felt like Gears of War 4 wasn't worth playing because it's just old formula. So yeah. Now I have somebody else in here though, Mr. Worry.
I have no idea if this is working because I haven't done one of these in forever.
I can hear you.
Okay, and I don't have any icon, right? Correct?
No, you don't. You just kind of it's like a black screen.
I have no idea what I'm doing. All right. How you doing, Rand?
I'm doing all right.
I'm listening to you. You're having a crisis of conscience.
Me and you are very much similar. I think I told you yesterday, we're old fossils from a gaming age long past. We value deep single player experiences and stories over the typical multiplayer experience. Not saying multiplayer is a bad thing, but
no, I think that I'm able and you're able to look at things that you love and not just see that the glass is always half full. They do have some issues. Personally, for me, the issues are what you've been talking about. And I don't think it's so much what he said in the interview, because it was taken out of context. He does go on to say at the end, if you read it, that he would like there to be single player games and multiplayer games and a place for both. Am I correct in that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I think that the overreaction happens because of the actions up to this point from Microsoft. The cancellations, most of the cancellations were these single player games that people were excited about. The idea of once, Microsoft and Windows sort of connected, everything became about a service. And I don't think that that's a bad thing, but I do think that, like, when you're talking about following trends, trends come and go. I mean, bell bottoms are back in style. So if you're only focusing on one trend, what happens when you don't, if you're only focused on third base, there's second and there's first. So When the second base trend comes back around, what do you do? When the first base trend comes back, what do you do if you don't have all those bases covered to begin with? That's the problem that I have, because I do like the third base games, multiplayer sometimes, co-op sometimes, but I really like the first base single player games. And I don't think it's wrong, and I don't think it's bad if you're a fan to say, where are these experiences? Because it's not like other people aren't making them.
Right, because Nintendo's making them, and Sony's basically
Right.
all Sony's making are those type of games.
So if those games aren't, the future of the industry because they don't have the impact that they did, and other people are still making them, then I don't think it's an unfair, proposition to say, hey, why can't you do that as well, or even do one or two in addition to this other stuff? And you're eating, aren't you?
Yeah. No. I was just drinking. I was just drinking my pop. But I mean,
your
look,
pop.
My pop. I say pop because I'm from the
Jesus,
Midwest, from
it's
Chicago.
Called soda. It's soda.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
It's soda everywhere else, but it's pop here in Chicago. I just look. I've never once in the last 12 years thought about getting a PlayStation. Not a single time.
See that?
Because
I mean, that's odd to me, but.
Well, because everything I ever wanted to play was on the system. I had so much to play because I'm an achievement whore, but I play everything.
Right.
That it was
Barbie Adventures.
Barbie Adventures, yeah. Right. So to me, it was like I could buy a PlayStation,
right?
But I'm not going to use it, and the small amount of times I use it isn't worth the money that I would pay for it. Right? It's always been that kind of give and take with me.
Okay.
But every single year since the launch of the Xbox One, I feel like their exclusive lineup has gotten worse and worse and worse. I feel like this year is their worst in a long time.
Well, look, there are people that I'm sure there are people that think their exclusive lineup got better and better and better because they love this idea of party chat, multiplayer. I mean, that seems to be the prevalent thing when you're an Xbox fan. And I'm a fan, but I'm not the typical fan that seems to be popular now. Party chat, get online. That seems to be the road that they're going. And again, that goes back into service, but there's all types of people playing games. And I remember a long time ago, and if you remember this, great, Phil Spencer referencing Nintendo and what they do with their first party IP and how he wanted to be like that or model Xbox like that. So it's kind of confusing when we go from that to a bunch of cancellations. And then the big game seems to be, and I'm not knocking it. I mean, I didn't know. I got a lot of heat on Twitter for this. I had no idea that you couldn't play Sea of Thieves single player. I thought that I'd be able to go in, play the game, and then say, okay, my one friend whose family who I play with can play with me, and that's it. But apparently you need multiple people. I think 4, correct?
Well, I'm not sure on how many people you need, but I'm just going to say it'd be hard to
play with 2.
It'd be hard to play by yourself.
Right. So to me, why couldn't that game be something that allows me to play by myself and with someone else? And that just paves the way into this idea that most of the thinking that I'm seeing coming from them, and if I'm wrong, tell me. Most of the thinking that I'm seeing coming from them seems to be everything that they create first party has to start and end with multiplayer and service.
Seems like it for me, and I think like the single player experience that we want, they'll do, but like a small budgeted game like Recore,
right?
Something that maybe doesn't have a lot of risk, because let's be honest, Scalebound was a risky investment. You basically you funded a Japanese game on a platform that doesn't sell Japanese games. Like that is incredibly risky.
Well, I mean, I didn't understand why they would do it because they did it with the 360. They spent a lot on Japanese games and didn't get any traction whatsoever. So it was kind of strange to me that they were trying it again. I was great that they were trying it. But, when you talk about that third party thing, here's my question. What IP could anyone create, right, that was built as a service that would rival, say, Call of Duty, a third party game that's built for multiplayer and service? There aren't many companies that can create an IP that would stand up against the third-party IPs that give a console like the PlayStation or the Xbox that multiplayer service kick. So if you're getting that from third party, right,
Mm-hmm.
then why can't you invest in one or two deep narrative games like Sony does? I mean, Sony doesn't have anything multiplayer that they created on their own. It's basically third-party deals, Destiny and Call of Duty.
Right.
So if you're on the PlayStation, you're getting that multiplayer services kick. Basically, Sony's getting it for free from third party because they built up a base and they're the market leader. And they're the market leader because of they capitalized on a stumble from Microsoft out the gate. They did.
Yeah, of course.
and now, I mean, I don't think that stumble is helping them still now. They're creating content every single generation. If you look back, the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and I'm going to sound like a complete PlayStation fanatic, and I hate that I sound like that. I'm not trying to come off that way. Sony creates at least one IP that can carry forward to the next generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do. And they've done it this generation with Horizon. So they have now a brand new IP to add to all the other IPs and all the other studios that they've acquired over the years because they're a console company. They're acquiring studios to make content for their console. Microsoft hasn't created an IP yet that they can carry forward to the next generation.
Oh, I mean, most of their franchises are from either original Xbox or from early 360 when they were the leaders.
Right. And see, the problem that I have is that you can't even discuss this stuff with people without it being this overreaction. You're talking about overreaction on your part. I mean, the overreaction to just quickly defend no matter what is insane to me. It doesn't mean that Xbox is bad. I love my Xbox. I don't have a million gamer score, but I'm close to 80,000. I use it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I went from the PS2, which I loved, and I expected so much in the PS3, and I was so disappointed. And then the 360 hit, and it was like a revelation. I mean, you remember all the games that came out on that, all the fun, everything. And when I went from the 360 to the Xbox One, just like when I went from the PS2 to the PS3, I had expectations, and I still have those, and I want it to do well. The reason why I keep hounding on this idea of single player is, yeah, I like it, and yeah, it's not the trend. I get that. But there's a portfolio, and you can't just cover first base when there's second and third out there. Trends come and go. You have to be healthy in all areas.
But do you think it's a little bit more easier for, I mean, I've said it during this very video, like I think Sony can take more risks because they have more. Like you can do more when you have more.
Well, let me ask you this question. Why does Sony have more?
Why does Sony has more? Hold on a second.
Do 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 do. This is like the intermission thing I'm doing because Rand just went away. I haven't podcasted in a long time, and he just leaves me here. So, what else should we talk about? Voodoo Vince. Voodoo Vince. Everyone talked about Voodoo Vince. They couldn't wait for it. Then as soon as it came out, everybody started talking about City Skylines and forgot about Voodoo Vince. Boo, 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 boo. So basically, I just hijacked Rand's stream here. Not sure what to talk about at this point. I want Xbox to do well. I really do. I like my Xbox. I love the controller. It keeps me. I tweeted out a while ago that it keeps me there. The controller, I love it. I love the idea, and most people don't even know this, that the Xbox One can connect to a dual band router, the 2.4 channel and the 5 gigahertz channel. On the 5 gigahertz channel wireless, you download much quicker. The network is faster. I just want them to do well in all areas. Rand, please tell me you're back.
I'm here. Somebody was at the door.
Great.
To go answer it. Sorry about that.
I did like an intermission song, and then I started talking about something else.
This always happens when you go live, especially during the afternoon.
Well, I appreciate it. This is a podcast. I haven't podcasted in a long time, and I like the fact that you just left.
Got to keep on. I wanted you to come on when they revealed Scorpio because I've always appreciated your input.
Which I'm getting. I can't wait.
On topic, yeah, I'm getting Scorpio. Like, look, I think people when I criticize or when I don't follow the lead, people get upset because people view me as, hey, here's a guy who is nothing but Xbox.
Right.
Owns 600 games on Xbox One.
Sure.
Plays nothing but Xbox. And they see me and they see me questioning the
Right, but that's the
direction the
mark.
company's
But
heading, and they get
right, but that's the
defensive
mark
about
of a
it.
fan. That's the mark of a true fan. You cannot be a fan and be blind. You just can't. There's no. It just doesn't. I mean, maybe you can. I've never been like that. I've always been somebody who looks for the worst case scenario so that I'm not disappointed, which is insane. I get that. I mean, that's why I'm worrywart. But I don't think it's a stretch. I don't think it's a leap of logic that you were talking about earlier at all. I mean, you know, apart from writing on the wall and throwing paint on the wall at this point, it's there. I mean, all you
Mm-hmm.
have to do is look. And
Yep.
I'm not
I mean,
saying that people shouldn't enjoy their Xboxes or stop playing and run to PlayStation. I'm saying that I'm saying for me, I like my Xbox. I want at least one experience. I mean, you got Spider-Man coming, right? You have that zombie game coming. You have God of
mhm.
War coming. You have, I mean, they're all single player big IPs that they're investing in. Why can't I just have one? Why do I have to rely on a third party? If
Right.
if Sony's
Right.
relying on third party to give them their multiplayer and services content, why can't Microsoft? Why can't I rely on Microsoft to give me at least one single player game?
I think part of it is because they tried early in this gen, like
Yeah,
I mentioned before,
yeah,
Rise, Sunset Overdrive, Recore, Quantum
phenomenal.
Break, all
Quantum
those
Break was
games,
phenomenal, not
and all
Recore.
those games were great. Sunset
Right.
Overdrive, it's a crime to video
Oh, that's
games.
one of the best games this generation.
It's a crime that Knack 2 exists and Sunset
Yeah,
Overdrive 2 may not. It
yeah.
is embarrassment and it's a crime that doesn't. So
But
they
listen,
provided.
Sony's sticking with their IPs and creating more. I mean, you can hate on Knack 2 all you want. Listen, Knack 2 isn't a great game. I liked it. But the point is I got to play it. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
The point look at The Last Guardian, for God's sake. 10 years. Who would stick with that game for 10 years in development? You think Microsoft would stick with The Last Guardian for 10 years? No.
I don't think it was an active development for 10 years though. I think they just
Well,
shelved it
right, they
for a little
shelved
bit.
it, but when they announce
But it
things,
came out. Your point is that it came
it
out, you
came
got to
out.
play
It
it.
came out, you know,
Right.
and when they announce things, people always say, well, that's not going to come out for another 10 years. But people expect now that those games are going to come out on the PlayStation. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You were talking
Yeah.
earlier about we know what's coming in 2019, 2020. And people say, well, that's 2020. That doesn't count. But the point is, the industry and people know that those games will come out. And
No,
I
they will come out and they'll be good. That's like I, look, and I agree with you. I
breathe,
agree with you
breathe.
where you said I agree with you where you said everybody I love my Xbox today, tomorrow, the next day, in the future, even if my worst fear comes true.
Right.
Where is Halo? It's just Halo 6 and Ori 2 at E3, and the rest is
Yeah, I
no
have to be there for
surprises.
Halo.
I'm still gonna love Xbox because I love Halo.
Right.
I have a lot of personal relationships with a lot of people at Xbox that I consider friends. I'm not ditching the system, right?
Right.
At all, period, because I will play every single game on the Xbox. It's just that
Right.
there's a certain type of game that I feel is underrepresented on the Xbox that PlayStation provides for their fans. And it's getting to the point now where the PlayStation is getting pretty cheap. I might
Exactly.
need to fulfill,
But
and get
you hit the
those
nail on the head.
games.
What made you such a fan of the Xbox? A deep single player narrative driven
Mhm.
experience. Halo.
Yep,
Right?
exactly. Yep.
Halo 1 was couch co-op. Wasn't big multiplayer at the time. The story.
Well, I mean, it was Halo, it was Fable, it was
Exactly.
Gears of
Right.
War. Like a
Right.
lot of the which
I mean,
nowadays.
the last Gears of War had a friggin' horde mode in the single player. So,
Mhm.
and again, I'm sure this comes off to some as, we're hating or we just, are trying to downplay or damage Xbox in some way. But personally, for me, the biggest fans of something are people that do what you do. That's what I like. I like people that push, that don't just follow, don't just, toe the line or hide what's wrong in the corner so nobody sees it. It's important that they know that they have to do certain things for everyone. There's much more people out there that are going to play multiplayer. I mean, I don't want to admit that, but that's where we are now in this industry. Correct?
Mhm. Yep.
So I get that. But if nobody else was making the types of games that I liked, I wouldn't be this upset. But people are. And I don't think that if your favorite system to play on, and I have a PlayStation and I love playing on it. My favorite system to play on, though, has always been the Xbox. And I just want it to give me at least one gem that I can sink my teeth into, the way I did a Horizon or an Uncharted, or the way I will with Spider-Man, or the new God of War, or that new zombie game, Near Dawn. I want at least one thing. That's not asking too much as a fan base, I don't think.
Is not knowing the future, or not knowing when games are coming out and what games are coming out next year and beyond, does that bother you? Like, it kind of bothers me because, like, with Sony, you have the road plan, you
Right.
have the roadmap. You know what? You know, if Spider-Man's not good, that's okay because you can be like, hey, there's still Last of Us 2, there's still
And
Death
that, yeah.
Stranding,
Right.
right?
I'm sure it's going to be good, though. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be what I'm saying, but if one of those games was, you still have other
Exactly.
games
Right.
to hold on to, like, all right, this is the reason I have the system. With Xbox, it's a little bit different. I feel like it's changed from earlier in the gen when it was those games like Quantum Break and
Right.
Rise and Sunset to now you're holding on to Scorpio. Oh, it's Scorpio. It's gonna play all my third party games better. And while that is a really cool thing, and one of the reasons Xbox lost this gen was because of the power disparity, I want a
Right.
game to hold my arms around and be like, all right, here we go. 2019, no matter what happens, this game is going to be fantastic, right?
When you're talking about the whole beginning and they lost because of power narrative, that's correct, right? And then I see now how people are upset and they're saying, well, it's changing, and that's correct too. But here's the thing that people either miss or they just don't want to let into their mind or their brain. Sony is still releasing content. Do you know what I mean? They're still
Mm-hmm.
creating content, and whether or not it's for you or not, or whether or not it's for a certain area or a certain genre, whether it's not for you, yeah, they won in the beginning because of power and price, and that's important. I mean, that shouldn't have happened. Microsoft shouldn't have let that happen, but they did. Again, people know that that content is coming from Sony, and they can hold off and hold off and hold off and win on this narrative, which was wrong. It is wrong. The whole 1080p thing, 900p thing, it was completely and totally a joke, which is why I don't get now where this whole idea of selling a system on resolution is going to be the end all be all, because it wasn't a while ago and now it is. So,
Well, people flip flop. People
right,
people flip flop. Like in the beginning of the gen, it was Xbox gamers were holding up the exclusives.
right,
PlayStation gamers were like, "Why would you game on a 720p box? It's all about 1080p and
right, right,
900p."
which is insane. Right.
Right, and then recently it's become
About
PlayStation
content.
gamers saying, "Look at all these games, look at all these
Right,
exclusives," while Xbox gamers
right,
are like true 4K, 4K, and 4K and
right,
Scorpio. It flip flopped, and I don't even know they realized that they flip flopped along with it.
right.
Like,
But my point is, don't you think though that despite the yin and the yang of people fighting about this stuff, that when the content is still coming and still there, then it does give them the advantage, right? Content is king, correct?
content is king. Yep.
So I just want Microsoft to and I mean, I don't even know how Sea of Thieves is going to do. I don't want to say it's going to do bad, but I mean, do you think it's going to be this huge game?
I think it could be successful if it released in the right time frame. And that's why I made that video where I think it should come out next year. I think it can
Right,
be successful and
right,
exactly what maybe Microsoft needs, but it needs a window to itself. It cannot be released this holiday with Scorpio because every other single big AAA game that comes out this year is going to crush it then.
right. Yeah, I just think that I don't think it's too much. And when I go on a rant and get people, going crazy on me on Twitter, which is why I try and stay away from Twitter even now. It's all coming from my point of view, my personal wants. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to
Mm-hmm.
tell people what they should want. I'm saying, like, I want something like Spider-Man, something like God of War. I want something like Uncharted. I mean, I see people saying that single player games don't make any money. Well, Uncharted is making a lot of money. Then they pack it in and it makes even more. And then to extend the life of that single player game, they're releasing single player DLC, which I'm sure is going to do very well. So it's one example, and I get that there's many more ways to make money in multiplayer and co-op versus the single player, but it can be done with one franchise. It can.
No,
I think
you're
I
totally
think
right. It can.
Crackdown could be that IP, but I heard you talking again earlier about how you think it's just going to be a co-op multiplayer experience.
Yeah. I think that game is going to follow the Ghost Recon vein of four
I
player
hope
co
not.
op, screw shit up, fuck shit up with your buddies in multiplayer and have a good time. I don't think you know. I mean, maybe State of Decay might be a lot more along. I know State of Decay is a co-op game, but I'm pretty sure you can play that game in single player.
Right.
I don't know if it's
I
going to have
hope
a strong
Crackdown
rich
has a proper
narrative.
single player.
No, Crackdown, from what I understand, is going to have a single player, but I'm positive the focus will be on. From what I understand about Crackdown 3 is the fully destructible environments will only be impossible in
Right.
multiplayer.
When you're online, correct.
Yeah, so that'll probably be the mode that gets played the most because everybody wants to destroy shit. Uh, in, like Ghost Recon, like the Ghost Recon game that is out now has nothing to do with any of the Ghost Recons that came out previously.
Right.
It's a fun game to play and just waste time playing with your friends, and that's kind of what, like, I think Crackdown will be. It'll be just game where you just get on and destroy shit and power level up and jump around and just have a good time, you know?
And what you were saying about not knowing about the future for them, and Sony's roadmap until 2019, 2020, right? Death Stranding is going to come, not coming soon, but it's coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
The God of War game
Mm-hmm.
may come this year. It may come this year. It may come out the day Scorpio launches, which would be, a smart thing on their part to do, right? But
Mm-hmm.
this content is coming, and we don't know a lot about Microsoft's content. And does it bother me? The only way that it would bother me, and the only way that it does bother me, because it does, is because I don't know if they have things that are coming. Because where would this content come from?
Well, that was my whole point. Who's making the games, right? What studio is making the game?
They haven't acquired the amount of studios over the years as a console, in the console space, the way that Sony has, from PS1 to PS2 to PS3 to PS4. They haven't done that. So the studios that they do have, I think I know what they're working on, unless I'm mistaken. Halo 6, you have Sea of Thieves, you have Crackdown 3, you have the new Forza. What am I missing?
I mean, for what, the rest of this year?
Right,
I mean, you got Forza Motorsport 7.
Everything that they're working on. All their internal studios are busy.
Phantom Dust, right. State of Decay 2, Forza Motorsport 7, Crackdown 3, Halo 6, Gears 5. Forza Horizon 4, presumably. Okay. Yeah.
Well, they're working on a third-party game too, right? That's going to be multiplayer, Playground Games.
Yeah, they're working on a new IP that is, from what I understand, multi-platform.
So where from first party does something new come from?
I don't think anything new comes from first party. I think maybe you might get Fable from Rare after they're done with Sea of Thieves, but I don't think there's a scenario where 343 is working on 2 games right now, or Gears or Coalition's working on 2 games.
So how would that bode for E3 then?
Well, that's the next thing, is like I said before, if E3 is just what we know, Halo 6, Ori 2, maybe a Fable teaser, plus the current games and all the third-party stuff along with Scorpio, is that going to satisfy a lot of people's wants and desires?
And I'm sure there'll be some people who think it's great, but just because they feel like they have to say that it's great.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not one to say something's great if it's not. I've always been
well, that's why I like this, right? That's why I think it's.
I've always spoken my mind.
Right.
I'm not. Look, I've said from day one, like from the start of this, I love Xbox.
Right.
I love the games on it. I adore Halo. I have friends at Xbox that I want. I want the company to be successful because I want them to be successful. But I still I remember the story I told you about the first time I met Phil. Right. And I told him I thought you abandoned me in 2013.
Yeah.
Like the first time I ever met Phil Spencer, I played Halo with him. Towards the end of it, I was like, listen, I thought you abandoned us. I literally told Phil to his face that I thought you abandoned the core gamer that made Xbox what it was with that whole nonsense in the beginning of 2013.
Right.
And he respected my opinion for it.
Sure.
Like, I just don't want.
Do you think that he's doing that now?
No, I think he's being a good businessman.
Okay.
I think he's being a good businessman because you have all the data. Like, they have Xbox Live. They know exactly what
Right.
games you're playing, how long you play them. They know the most popular games on Xbox. So when Phil's looking at that and seeing, hey, all the popular games that people want to play are all these games as a service type games, right? And we've given our audience a bunch of single player focus experiences, and none of them caught on. Nobody bought them. So what I'm going to do as the head of Xbox going forward is I'm going to build games that people want to play based on what they're currently playing. Is games like that.
Okay.
And from a business standpoint, you can't argue with him. You can't argue with his reasoning.
No,
I mean,
I
he's
think
given,
I think he's right. I mean, I'm not saying that he was wrong. I'm saying that, though, if the majority of the base of a box, only wants one particular experience, then where does everyone else go?
well, it's like that Don Matcher quote,
Right.
right?
Right. I mean,
There's a system for you, essentially.
I mean, if you want to be healthy in the industry, not just, the multiplayer co-op service industry, if you want to be healthy in the industry and cater to everyone in the industry, then you can't just go with a particular class of gamer. You have to go with the masses and not the classes. So you have to cater to everyone's tastes. And if you don't, then, I don't know. What is the box eventually going to be for? It's going to be for people who love multiplayer and co-op and going in party chat and stuff like that. Where do you go? Where do I go? Do we stick with third-party offerings for single player and just give up on the first party?
I mean, it seems like a lot of Xbox gamers have given up on first party right now as is.
See, I think that's incredibly
Right?
sad. I think that it's important to create content. I do. I think it's important. And again, if nobody else was doing it, I would say, hey, okay, the trend is a lot more valid. But the trend is valid, but there are people still doing that. Do you know what I mean? They're still catering to everyone. So for me, when I say these things, it's not too much of a stretch for me to ask. I mean, God, people are posting financial statements. They made so much money last year. What that has to do with me and playing a game on a box, I have no idea. But if they did make all this money, can I have one game, one big game that caters to
what
not
you
just
want?
me? I mean, there's more than just me that like these type of games, right? We may not be the largest number, right? I mean, we may be the minority, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're still here. We're still buying the systems. We're still playing the games. And there has to be a model to expand single player that you can look at. DLC, Uncharted again, I bring that up. Last of Us did it very, very well. So again, it's a catch-22 though, because like you're saying, the fans won't buy those games to begin with. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
So if they don't buy those games to begin with, then you can't, expand on the single player IP with DLC and get a big game like those games like Uncharted and stuff like that. I mean, Halo has, up until the last Halo, had a great single player. Halo had a great single player in the last one. I just didn't like the story too much. But, why can't they do that with that game? Why can't they pay attention more to the story and really build it out? I mean, at least one game. I don't think it's too much to ask.
All right. Well, a couple people are asking for Kid Smooth to join because he is a dissenting voice to this. So I thought for a well-rounded conversation, you don't necessarily want two people that agree with each other. I also want to hear the other side of the argument. And Kid thinks I overreacted. So welcome.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ray. I came in like I just got home from work and I seen that I got a notification that you were live and I was like, holy shit. So I went to watch, like, damn, it's an hour in. I was like, so I was hoping I wasn't catching the tail end of it. But you can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. But no, I just read, reason why I said that, because I just read the title. It said, did I overreact to Phil Spencer's comment? And only reason why I said that, because, every time you say something, right, that's, I guess, critical, of Phil Spencer or Xbox, like the PlayStation fanboys, like, in your face, Kid Smooth, see, Ren's the best spot, all this other stuff. So, but, no, I don't really personally think, you per se overreacted. I think honestly everyone as media fanboys, fans has overreacted, because I feel like everybody's reacting to the headline itself and not just the discussion the discussion that was taking place. And that's where I think, dude, everybody's jumping to conclusions that, oh, this is what Xbox is going to be now because Phil Spencer said games like Zelda and Horizon don't have the same impact. And I feel like if anyone else had said this, like a Cliffy B or fucking somebody from Sony or something like that, it would have just like went over everybody's head. And everybody's most people are taking it as, oh, he's taking shots at Sony and Nintendo, and which I felt he was pretty much calling them the rule to today's exception of multiplayer games and service-based games being like the popular things to go to in gaming. And then you have Nintendo who releases like Zelda, and you got Sony who releases Horizon Zero Dawn, and they just do like really good and compared to the last single player or story driven based game that came out. You know, every single player based game or story driven based game that releases isn't going to do as well as a Horizon or a Zelda, or unless they're like a flagship franchise. You know, EA can't just drop a game, you know, that's not multiplayer, that's just expected to do to set trends and remain and be popular for a long period of time. I don't think many developers are. So, and I think him saying that, there was nothing wrong about that. And I think people got scared, or that, hey, oh, now Phil Spencer's just going to focus on games like Minecraft and Call of Duty and stuff like that. And I don't even think that's the case at all. I just think he was speaking in terms of how the industry is going. And I think people took it as he's not going to make any single player games because he feels like they don't have an impact. And they're like, whoa, Zelda sold this and Horizon sold that. And I was like, they completely just like looked over the point and they started paying attention to the headlines where it's Phil Spencer, an Xbox person, saying something about Zelda and Horizon that sounded negative. But
right,
that's
but
just,
I mean,
I looked at it and I was like, why is everybody like losing it? So,
well, I think part of the reason why I even made the video yesterday is because you have the head of Xbox talking about where the industry is right now and where it's going to the future. So I'm trying to connect the dots, maybe prematurely or whatever, but is it so hard to believe that since he sees single player games as having not as big of an impact financially as the games as a service, that basically moving forward, since Microsoft's own single player offerings have all failed this generation, essentially, that moving forward they're going to offer more of the games as a service because they're more financially viable than the alternative? Is that too much of a leap of logic to assume that that's the case?
I won't say that. But the thing is, one, because there's a lot, because they were talking about like, you know, Game Pass and the type of games that they would want to launch there, and I know he thinks about like Telltale and stuff like that, episodic games and whatnot, and Life is Strange. As far as if you look at certain games and they praise like ID at Xbox, and you see a lot of these smaller titles that have these deep stories and these creative like artworks, and they just kind of click. Like Little Nightmares looks freaking awesome, right? Mm-hmm. But these games aren't like big budgeted titles. You know, you don't need like an Uncharted budget to do that, or a Horizon budget to do that. You can get those games, and maybe the money really isn't there to try. Let's not try to make another Quantum Break, but we can still provide those titles without trying to force it. Because I mean, I'm sure they'll still release those games, or should their first party studios be should they be doing that? Remember, when Xbox exclusive, they all have single player elements, campaigns that are, I guess, not favorited as a single player experience. Like nobody, every time when I talk about Gears of War 4, nobody likes the campaign. When I talk about Halo 5, nobody likes the campaign. Or it's like, all right, well, it's the multiplayer. So I mean, they've tried. Do I think they should give up? No, but do I think there's other ways they could implement story-driven games without having to, let's say they maybe had a budget or an idea of flagship titles that they want to do. Well, maybe that direction has changed. Maybe they can look to the people that made Ori. Maybe they can look to the people that's making State of Decay, or they can look to so the other smaller games that they had to get. Well, we can deliver a good story, a good story-driven game without the resources we used to put into games like to a game like Quantum Break, or what we tried to do with Scalebound, or there's a reason behind it. I'm not going to be one of the ones that believe that single player or story driven games aren't going to be on Xbox more or less, no less or no more than they already been. If you look at Xbox lineup, what would be the last game you would consider deep story driven single player?
Quantum Break is probably the one I would consider the last game that came out that is probably more focused around story than anything else. I mean, it is a single player only game with it's Remedy. It's what they do. They make single player narrative experiences, more so than like Sunset Overdrive or Rise were, and Quantum Break didn't do well. I mean, it didn't sell for whatever reason.
Why?
I thought the game was good.
I know this is I don't know if it's a dumb question, but why didn't it sell? Why did what was it about it? I mean, you had a couple reveals, you had the presentations. We've seen a game, we've seen the idea. What was it that it didn't pop?
I don't think it's the game that was the issue. I think it was the audience on the box that was the issue. So I don't see the reason for it not selling isn't because it wasn't good. I think the reason for it not selling is because nobody has supported anything single player before that, the offerings that they gave. So if the audience isn't willing to grow, then of course they're going to cater to the audience, and the audience wants what Rand was talking about. And that's okay. Fine. That's fine. But there are other people out there. And, when you talk about being part of an industry, it's not just one particular group of people in that industry that you have to cater to. And if you're going to have a box on a shelf next to other boxes on shelves, then you at least have to do the minimum that the other boxes are doing to stay relevant, to follow trends. Trends come and go. The trend is multiplayer co-op services. But again, trends come and they go. So when the new trend comes around, what happens if you're not healthy in that area?
Exactly. Yeah. Because as somebody mentioned in this chat, is like, why does nobody give Sony shit for not having multiplayer franchises?
Well, I just brought that up. You know what I mean? They don't create their own multiplayer co-op experiences because they're given to them by third parties.
Exactly.
It's almost a given. And Microsoft would get those too. Microsoft or Sony can never create a multiplayer exclusive first party experience that rivals the service that Call of Duty will give to them both. They won't do it. They can't do it.
They did at one point.
Well,
Halo was bigger than anything else, essentially. Right. But times changed.
So if you're getting that service and experience for free, essentially, from a third party, I get that you want your own. And again, if you're getting something for free and then you still go out and make your own, why would you do it? You do it because you want to be healthy. You want to have your own part of that pie, right? So why not then make the whole pie and get the other part, which is single player, deep narrative experience? Why not? If you're going to get that third party multiplayer co-op experience essentially for free from third party, and you can't make a first party multiplayer co-op experience that's going to give you as much money and as much service as those third party big multiplayer games do, then take those third party big multiplayer games, make a few of your own like Microsoft is focused on, and make a couple other experiences. But again, they've made them, like you said, Rand, and the audience hasn't responded the way that the audience seems to respond on the other boxes to those IPs.
Yeah, and that's like, look, and I understand, like, people might be happy with just a multiplayer only type experience on Xbox. But it's like, can't we have both? Like, like why provide one but not another, like the other as well? And maybe this is why Sony's doing so well. Is they're not really competing with third parties. They let the third parties build the multiplayer experiences while they fulfill the needs of a different segment. And they provide these Spider-Man, Last of Us, Death Stranding, and those games have multiplayer. Well, at least Last of Us and it's not like those games don't have multiplayer. They do, but the primary focus of those games is single player.
And I talked about exclusives and how I think that they matter. Some people don't think that they even matter. But let me ask you this question: you like the Xbox controller better than the PlayStation controller, correct?
Yeah, I've always said that,
and I do as well. But isn't that a form of exclusivity? Isn't that what pulls you to the console?
I would agree.
Isn't your friends list and Xbox Live a reason that it pulls you? Isn't that a form of exclusivity on that console? Because the other console has a controller, the other console has an online service, right? But so isn't the Xbox controller, Xbox Live, your friends, isn't that its own form of exclusivity on the Xbox?
Yes.
So exclusivity is important. And if those minor things are important, then a big AAA exclusive first-party game that's exclusive is also important.
No, I mean...
What, did I just drop the mic? Everybody got quiet.
No. I'm trying to
bad headphones, and I gotta play with the wire to make sure, because when I don't know if somebody's going out or if I move my wire 2 inches to the left or something.
Right. No, but I think it's important. I think they're important. I mean, people cringe when I say things like, consoles. You almost have a sense of identity with an exclusive and a console. Do you know what I mean? When you think of Xbox, you think of Halo. Why? Why do you think of Halo?
Because it's basically been hand and fist with the system since
it's a big exclusive game. When you think of Sony, you think of a lot of exclusive games. You think of Uncharted, you think of God of War, you know what I mean? You think of Gran Turismo on PlayStation, on Xbox as well. You think of Forza, right? I think Forza is one of their best IPs that they've created. That's exclusive. Mm-hmm. That's exclusive. So they are important. They do have value.
No, of course there's value to them. Nobody says that there aren't any value to exclusives. It's just, I think in this day and age, I think exclusives sell consoles less and less and less than they used to. Like we just mentioned, Halo used to be bigger than Call of...
Tell that to the Switch with Zelda.
Well, Nintendo's always been a little bit different, though.
I know, but listen, Uncharted sold a lot. Then they packed it in. They sold even more, even though it was packed into the box, right? People went out and bought PlayStations, not because it was a PlayStation. They bought it because it was a PlayStation, and in the box was Uncharted. It's important. It is important. And when I say value, I don't necessarily always mean money. There's inherent value to something beyond money. There's identity, there's brand loyalty, there's an audience that stays with you from one generation to the next because of that one or two pieces of exclusivity with an IP. Like Horizon was created this generation. There's going to be people that buy the PlayStation 5 just because they want that sequel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same way with Halo on the original Xbox. They bought that Xbox, the next Xbox for Halo 2. They bought the next Xbox for Halo 4. That they wanted those IPs. They wanted that exclusivity. You build a base and they follow you not because of third party. They stay with you because of your first party offerings.
Well, that is true because a lot of the Call of Duty fans left when
exactly
Sony got the marketing.
Third party fandom for third party is very fickle.
That is true. That is very true. I mean, Final Fantasy used to be on Nintendo.
Exactly.
Right? Then it switched to PlayStation. So you can't rely on those things. You're right.
The value, to me, the value is much more than monetary. And that's why I think Microsoft might be not seeing this correctly because, yeah, they want to make tons of money. I get that. So does Sony. So does anybody. I want to make tons of money. But, there is brand identity with certain content. And if you create new content every generation, then it sort of takes the pressure off of those big three pillars, which is why they seem to be like faltering now, right? They're not as big anymore. Halo isn't as big anymore. if you created a bunch of IP going forward from one generation to the next, it takes that pressure off of those big IPs. And then you can push them out further and longer and release them, and they feel fresh and they feel new because they don't have to be relied on so much.
Yeah, that's the issue, like, because Halos and Gears are been overused. Like, one of the biggest mistakes Xbox ever did, and I think, and I've always said, one of the reason for where it is now is the Kinect. They canceled a bunch of games in favor of Kinect. Microsoft should have used their position at the end of last gen to start launching new IPs. Right?
Sure.
New hardcore IPs that could have taken into Xbox One, but they were so blindsided with that casual money that they decided to chase after the Kinect. And what ended up happening? They over-engineered a system to be less powerful because they needed to have money for the Kinect.
Right.
So they ended up with a less powerful system than PlayStation 4 that was more expensive and no new, fresh new IPs. They tried starting them. They started starting Rise. They tried starting Sunset Overdrive, Quantum Break, Scalebound, except all those games basically didn't work for one reason or another.
But were those all first party or second and third?
I mean, they own the IP. Well, no, they didn't own the IP for Rise.
Right.
They do own the IP for Quantum Break, for Scalebound. Sunset, they don't own the IP for that. But the reliance on Halo and Gears is
right.
I think it wears a lot of people
thin. The difference is, to be fair, Sony did chase that casual money too with the motion control and all that stuff. But the difference is, before that, they built up studios. They built up IPs that they can fall back on. And Microsoft didn't.
Right. Kid, let me ask you this. I'm going to change this thing to E3. What does Microsoft need to do to shut people like me up at E3? To be like, all right, you know what, Rand, you're totally wrong because they did. What would they need to do?
Man, Rand, I'll tell you this before I do this. I just hope you don't have insiders, right? All right. I hope he's not an insider. To turn it around for Rand, what Microsoft honestly needs to do is, and I sent Rand my prediction list. they need to do that. You know, here's the thing, right? We're pretty much assuming that Microsoft don't really have much coming based off the studios we know they own. We expect that 343 isn't working on anything but the next Halo, that the Coalition isn't working on anything but the next Gears, and so on, right? Yep. And I feel like what Microsoft need to do, and if Phil Spencer is really reinvested in first party, he needs to show a reason why we went on and canceled Fable Legends, why we went on and canceled Scalebound, and we need to see. Honestly,
that's an excellent
other than
point.
the games that that's already been announced, we need to see 3 to 4 new games that all need to release.
Let me just jump in. That's an excellent point, because
16 months.
They did cancel these projects, right? And they did say that they were hard choices. But in order to create what they wanted to, hard choices had to be made. So all of those things were canceled. So there has to be something, correct? Wouldn't you think that there would be? Now, if they don't show anything, then your point is, where did that stuff go? Why was it canceled? Right? Where did the money go?
Well, the money went down into a pit and burned, essentially.
It went into VR. It went to PlayStation VR.
4K VR.
All right, kid. Well, then, I remember. I think I told you what I thought was going to happen for this E3, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If that happens, if my worst case scenario, they show up, it's Scorpio talk, it's a bunch of third party games, it's the first party stuff we know, and we only get Ori 2 and Halo 6. What then? Like,
and great third party games on the Scorpio.
I'd be heartbroken.
You'd be heartbroken. Kid Smooth.
Yeah.
Would be heartbroken. This is huge.
Told me, and the thing is, I'm one of the.
Is he like a huge Xbox fan?
Worry,
dude. Like,
I've been out of the loop for a while, man. I have no idea.
No, I never made it to BGST. But yeah, no. As much, I'm probably the minority that says, "Well, I hope I see Halo 6 at E3." I'm really the minority to see.
Oh, I am as well. I mean, I want to see it. I love Halo. But I know it's going to be there.
I really don't care to see Ori and the Blind Forest 2. So if you told me that Halo 6, let's say if I get into that Xbox conference, other than being happy to be there and I see Scorpio, but if other than Halo 6 and Ori and the Blind Forest 2 and the games we already known about,
right,
and all that was going to be shown was third-party games, I would be heartbroken because the thing is, even though I want a Halo 6, I want to see new games. I want to see sequels to like some of the newborn IPs that came.
But what happens if your worst case scenario happens and then all the talk is, well, wait till next E3?
Nah,
Wait to Tokyo Game Show.
It wouldn't. How can I say this? The talk of waiting, or I'm looking forward, this would just end and it would just be, it is what it is. Like it would just be like, whatever, I'm going to, it's like, all right, this is what it is. I'm a game on this for that. I'll game on my PlayStation and Nintendo for unique games or exclusive experiences, and I'll just play on the Xbox for third party and everything, and third party and Halo, pretty much. That's what I would just. It wouldn't be like this whole
Gears and Forza, right?
Yeah, it won't. Me personally, after if E3 turns out to be like my worst case scenario, or your worst case scenario, whatever, it for me, it wouldn't be like, oh well, I can't wait to Gamescom or watch where it is. It's just gonna be whatever, and I would just be next year. I won't be saying I can't wait. When next year it happens, I would just go in, I guess, ignorant, and then I would just have to be surprised. Then I won't anticipate anything like at all. Like I that's how heartbroken I would be, that I would just be like, oh well, it is what it is. This is what we got. This is what we got from this console, and this is what's going to be. Am I going to abandon it and sell this shit? No, I'm not going to do that. But it's my tone, my attitude, and my expectations will be a whole lot different going forward.
All right,
that's fair.
Yo,
now my buddy Magic, I saw that you wanted to jump in. I know you have a lot to say about this, so hit us with those thoughts, yo.
It's an interesting topic, man. I was listening to you guys earlier. I wanted to say I want to jump in like 20 minutes ago, but I was busy. But yeah, I mean, all this stuff going on with what Phil said. You brought up E3. For me, I want to see new studios is my main thing. I want to see some new studios working on some new projects, because we know what 343 is doing. We know what the Coalition is doing. Playground Games, right? We all know what's going on there. But I want to see some new studios, small or big, whatever, just making some new IPs for me.
Yeah, I mean, my thing was, after I saw the Scorpio reveal, right? And I don't pay attention to the ancillary stuff back and forth, but just the idea of all the thought and effort that was put into that box from them. I can't see a scenario where they put all that thought and all that effort into the box and then just didn't do anything in terms of creating content on their own for it. That's not just shoehorned into multiplayer and services. I can't see that as a scenario that comes true. I hope that it doesn't. And again, I'm only asking for one game that
you
comes
just want
out.
one game,
like
please.
The missing piece to Microsoft's puzzle is support. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's the missing piece. Support at least one of those games. Give them a new IP that can be put next to Gears, Forza, and Halo. That's all. That's all I would like to see.
It's a weird situation, because if you flip the story, right? Say PlayStation is in Xbox's shoes, right? The sales are switched. Would people be saying the same thing about multiplayer exclusives on PlayStation? Because they focus on third-party marketing deals, whereas all their first-party focuses on single player. Or Microsoft is kind of somewhere in between. Right. But people have been complaining about going away from single-player games on Xbox, but PlayStation doesn't really do that with multiplayer either. So you have to find the right
talked
balance,
about that. I mean, multiplayer service-based games is basically a freebie from third parties for any box, right? Xbox gets it, PlayStation gets it, and they're not going to create their own exclusive first-party multiplayer service-based IP that can rival a Call of Duty or a Destiny. They did. Rand brought up Halo. They did have that, but they don't anymore. So on the one hand, Microsoft seems to be, and I could be wrong, they seem to be putting all their eggs into that basket when they could get it for free. Sony isn't putting all their eggs in that basket because they're getting it for free, and they're creating content that's themed console gamers.
Well, see, you brought up Halo. One thing I'd like to see them do is start to bring in that next Halo, right? That next Gears. They've been riding Halo and Gears for 10 plus years now.
What do you mean the next one? You mean like
there should be a new first-party shooter to come along to eventually take Halo or Gears' place?
It could have been Destiny, right?
Seen that by now.
It could have been Destiny.
Could have been Destiny.
Right, it could have been.
It could have been Destiny.
Right.
It could have been. But I mean, it could have been Perfect Dark. They had a perfect opportunity when they reintroduced Perfect Dark Zero.
Could have been was it? It could have been Mass Effect. Could have been who else they had before things went third party on there.
Even Shadowrun back in the day. Like where's
Shadowrun.
the new where's Shadowrun remastered? You know, that could be huge now.
Well, because me and Magic, I've known Magic since like 2009. We game together. We're in parties together, and I've asked him this question countless times. If you were in charge of Xbox, you know, and I'll ask you guys this too: what game would you build?
Me personally,
what would you focus on? Yeah, like what was the game that you would like if you're in charge? If you're in charge, like what game do you build? What mega franchise?
A third person action adventure. A video game, a character that you can identify with the Xbox, like Nathan Drake identifies with PlayStation.
So, like Recore?
Recore could have been that. I mean,
yeah,
Recore could have been that, but they half-assed it. I mean,
they gave it to the wrong developers.
Scalebound could have been that.
What I would have done, like, because the thing is, I think they have a gem in Joanna Dark. They got a whole universe with that.
They do. They absolutely do.
They could do it. It doesn't have to be a first-person shooter. I would say I would look at Tomb Raider. I look at Splinter Cell. I look at Uncharted, and I was like, "There's my next Perfect Dark."
You can make your own stealth action game centered around Joanna Dark.
Yes,
right.
Her sexy ass. Oh my God, yes, you can.
and just make it mature, make it hardcore, make it really deep, make it look phenomenal, build it from the ground up to take advantage of Scorpio, then scale down to the Xbox One. And then again, the missing component to this all is support. So I hope that they do that, and I hope that a game comes out that captures the audience's imagination and heart the way that Horizon seems to have. That's all that I want.
They had an amazing platformer called Cameo Elements of Power.
Cameo's a great game. Great game. It was a launch title on the 360.
Yeah.
Was Elements of the Power the subtitle? I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, it's called Cameo Elements of Power. It's actually backwards compatible now. You can play that.
Yeah. I've heard Cameo. I just never heard of that subtitle.
Yeah,
okay.
And it's rare. It's rare being rare. It's really good. Just like Banjo Nuts and Bolts didn't review well, wasn't received well, but you can go back and play that now. I've been playing it, and it's really good.
Right. So I think when you look at it from Microsoft's perspective, though, they've tried some single player games. They haven't done so well, and I mean I agree. They can easily make their own Horizon, right?
Sure.
But it's a risk. But if they're willing to stick along this multiplayer path, which it seems like they're going to, instead of trying to find like the little niche that the third parties don't cover or their own first parties don't cover, just go after the huge genres. Shooters, battle royale games are really big right now. Big survival MMO style games are really big right now. Like grab one of those.
State of Decay's coming, right?
True. State of Decay could fill that type of arc. But I don't know. Is it though? I mean, it's 4-player co-op. They haven't really shown much details on how the multiplayer works on there yet.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just speaking about me in general. I'm not part of the whole YouTube thing and Xbox community thing and all that stuff. I just want what I want. You know what I mean? And I know that sounds selfish, but I like playing on the Xbox, and I just want one game. Again, Rand's probably going to laugh again. All I want is one. I just want one new IP to put on the shelf next to the big IPs, and I think that they have to do that.
But here's the thing, Worry. And I'm not. You guys hear me? Can somebody say something so I know my
we can hear you fine.
All right, good. All right. Here's the thing about Microsoft that I hear people like, well, they don't give you new IPs. If you think about it, Microsoft, since the launch of the Xbox One, every year has launched a new IP. Every year. It's just none of them has done what we would like them to do. If they all had a reaction like Horizon and Nier and all this other stuff, you know, hey, hooray, we'd be like, okay, it would. I guess this conversation wouldn't be taking place if Quantum Break sold 600,000 this first week, or if Recore was a masterpiece at a value. You know what I mean? It's
right.
But the IPs have just been there. They just haven't been supported. They haven't been receptive. Reviewed well and whatnot. Right. Thank you. And stuff. So it's like, well, damn, I can't. So I don't want to walk around and pretend like, hey, they haven't been giving us new IPs, because you're saying, hey, I want new IPs, and they might just give us a new IP.
I don't even want new IPs plural. I just want one.
Yeah, but you might get that, but it may not
be a big one,
or it may not be as supported like you thought. So what happens in our mind, it kind of just doesn't count.
Well, you want the new IP, but you want it to be like a masterpiece, like, because they gave you.
No,
Recore,
I mean, when I say I want a new IP, it makes it sound like they aren't working hard to create new IP, and they are. I'm not trying to discount that they're doing that, but I would like something that caters to the thing that you and I appreciate more, Rand.
Well, I mean, it's not just me. It's Magic appreciates good single player. Right. I mean, Magic. What was your favorite game of last gen? Number one of all.
Grand Theft Auto 5.
Really? I could have sworn you said Last of Us was the best game you played last gen, and you're an Xbox only gamer essentially.
No, I wouldn't say that's the best, but I mean, it's like that saying, why can't we have both? Like, I primarily play multiplayer games for the most part, but I look at games like Spider-Man or Days Gone or God of War, and they all look great, and I wish I had those too. You know, I want both.
Yeah, I would love something like a Days Gone on the Xbox that identifies with the platform and that also gets support and that, you know, gets talked about really well. I'm sorry, I'm stuttering. I'm so nervous. That they could put next to Gears, Forza, and Halo. That's all that I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to, like I said, Microsoft is trying to find these little niche genres that don't step on the toes of themselves and third party. Whereas I feel like Sony is just saying, hey, screw it, we're going to make this huge AAA game and we're going to put it out and everyone loves it. Where, when I look at a game like Recore...
But why does that step on anybody's toes if a first-party console maker creates content?
I disagree. I disagree with that narrative as well. I think if you have a good idea for a game, just because it, somewhat blurs the lines between a game that maybe Ubisoft is doing, so what?
Right. So what?
There's plenty of huge shooters out right now, and people are playing, Siege, Overwatch, Call of Duty, Battlefield, Battlefront.
It goes back to the idea that nobody moves from one generation to the next and follows a platform for that third-party single-player game because they can get it anywhere. They follow for IPs that they identify with on the platform.
Right, I agree. So if you have a good idea, I just want a AAA. I think a lot of their games that they've been doing that are single player focused, I would consider more B tier. The mid level. Cliff
like State of K2 and stuff like that.
Yeah, State of K2, Recore.
What would you consider Sea of Thieves? I think Sea of Thieves is a AAA game.
Yeah,
I mean, because you have to define AAA. The term used AAA is basically the budget of the game.
Right, but I mean that's a technical definition. But for me, I also look like, just what does it look like? Does it look like
how behind
a game for the masses? Right. Does it
how
look
much
like
push do they put behind it?
Yeah. Does it look like you're trying to sell to 5 million people, or you're trying to capture a smaller audience? Like, exactly. I want a game that looks like everyone on Xbox needs to get this, not just a small community.
Like a Quantum Break.
Yeah.
Well, you don't think they're going to try to capture a huge audience with Sea of Thieves, though?
I think any game you put out, sure, you want the most people to buy it as possible, but at the same time, it's like what I was brought up with Ubisoft games. When you look at Ubisoft's new IPs, Watch Dogs, The Division, I can't even think of the third one off the top of my head. But those games,
For Honor,
those games look like tons of people are going to play them. When I look at a game like Recore, I'm like, I'm not sure millions and millions of people are going to get this. I'm sure they would like to, but it's more of, you need to put that effort up front versus just hoping for it at the end.
Right. I mean, they lowered the price of the thing. I mean, it came out at $30 too. So
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, it came out.
I don't know.
At
I don't know.
$40.
I've been very harsh lately when it comes to Microsoft, but it's not because I don't like Microsoft. It's because I do, and I'm just not happy with what I've been seeing. That's all.
I mean, because if none of us cared about Xbox,
no, that would be great. Keep doing what you're doing.
We wouldn't even have the show. It'd just be like,
right.
you know, Kids Move would be doing what Kids Move does. You'd be doing what you do. The community of one stuff, you know, that you used to do, but you don't necessarily do anymore.
No, I'm dead.
Like,
yeah.
We just, I wouldn't even have to make these videos because it's like, I don't care. I care about Xbox in ways that I don't care about Sony. Like,
right.
I don't care what Sony does. I care, and that's why I made these things, because Xbox has been a huge part of my life for so long, and a huge part of probably my future going forward, that like there are some things that I want to see addressed. So I figured I'd make a video addressing that. Like,
but you know what, Rand?
What?
If you didn't care what Sony was doing, you wouldn't be upset that Microsoft isn't doing
it. Okay, fair enough.
I mean, but
that's why I'm upset as well. I mean, it's not a bad thing.
Constructive criticism is good, right? That's what got us out of the DRM debacle. People spoke up.
Exactly.
They made changes. If everyone just loved everything, nothing would change, right? They'd have no reason to innovate or be any better because everything is just amazing.
Which is why this is good. Talking about this stuff, right?
Yes.
Well, that's I mean, that's why I brought Kid in here, because Kid had the differing opinion. It's always good to have two sides of the argument, because you just don't want everybody agreeing with stuff. And maybe Kid's right. Maybe E3 comes in, Phil's got that swag as he always does,
I would love
and boom, 4 huge games, AAA, new IPs. Here's why we've been so quiet. Here's the new games we're working on. Here's where we see the future of Xbox going. And boom, everybody's happy. I'll make a video saying I was completely wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong. Like, nothing would make me happier than me being wrong. Like, with me reading in between the lines of Phil's comments.
Sure.
But then there's the other side of the stuff. It's like, well, what happens if I'm right? What happens if it is exactly what I think it is, and it is just Halo 6 and Ori 2, and maybe something else?
Then wait till next E3.
Well, no, because there is no month, because everybody says wait to E3 right now. That's everybody's thing.
They
wait
said
to
that
E3.
last year too.
And that was last year's thing too.
Man,
so it's like
I'm so freaking like nervous that I kind of just want the shit to leak so I can fucking see what's going on. Like, I'm just like, come on, just show me something. Like,
you just want that leak where it's like, here's this game, this game, this game, and this game.
Do you think
like,
a deal for Splinter Cell would be big?
Yeah.
No, there's no way. There's no way Ubisoft. Nobody's getting a timed exclusive game from Ubisoft. You know, which, I mean, Splinter Cell coming back is huge.
Exactly.
Like,
it was huge on the original Xbox. I can't
wait to play it. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to play it. I love stealth games.
Absolutely.
You know, it's obviously going to have a multiplayer focus.
Stealth game.
But I'm excited for it to come back. I don't think it'll be exclusive by any sense of the, but I don't know. Like, there's a part of me that is like, it's just like, I kind of.
You want the best case
you look
scenario.
At the studios.
Right.
Yeah, I want the best case scenario. I want the Kids Move scenario. 5 new IPs. I can make a video saying I was wrong. You guys can all make fun of me, but I'll be happy I was wrong.
I'll be happy with one.
But I honestly think, just from the way things are, like looking at everything going on, talking to people that I do know,
right,
that it's going to be slim pickings. And if you guys watched the Phil Spencer interview on Xbox On that he did with Benny Central, it's implied heavily that Scorpio is designed to be the third-party machine.
Right.
Oh, it is implied so heavily. And if that's the case, if they want to be the third-party machine, then so be it.
But we got to look at it. Wait, here, this is where I also wanted to talk about, because a lot of people took that and just took it like so wrongly. It's like, you got to think, this far into the generation, most of us kind of are either console choice, and there's a lot of us that have multiple consoles, and a lot of people are playing majority on PlayStations. Like, some people who have Xbox, and maybe the Xbox is their secondary console, and they're just using it for games that they're not going to play on PC, versus, and then whereas PlayStation, the perceived, better resolution, they're playing their multiplats and they're playing their PlayStation exclusives. So if I don't think this is like, oh, we're just going to make a third-party machine and we're not going to, focus on our exclusives. I think what he really meant by that is like, no, we understand that people own multiple consoles, and we understand that maybe a lot of people are gaming, and just looking by sales, a lot of these third-party games are in North America, because obviously worldwide, but North America is actually a close fight. A lot of these third-party games in North America are actually selling more on the competition, and that means they're being played more on the PlayStation versus the Xbox. So what we're going to do is we're going to develop this box now that they have a console that the Xbox will be the de facto place to play the game, because it's going to run better, it's going to look better, and not just for our games, but for third party as well. Meaning that if you do have an Xbox and PlayStation, we now want you to play your Call of Duties, your Maddens, and stuff like that on our console instead of the PlayStation, because ours look and run better. And that's how I feel about it right now. By default, because I'm an Xbox, I play all my third-party games on Xbox, and I play all my exclusives on PlayStation, right? That's how I am by default. But there's a lot of opposites of me who just only play Gears, Forza, Halo on Xbox, and then play everything else on PlayStation. Right. And they really want to target that group with Scorpio by getting more player base for people who want more than just the first-party exclusives to get onto Scorpio.
See, the problem for me with that, like, it's a play for the future, right? You're trying to get those people who are on PlayStation just for the third party to now be on Scorpio. The problem is the release dates have become unsynced, right? They're not synced up anymore. So Scorpio is going to launch 2017, but then when's the next PlayStation going to launch? There's been rumors of 2018, maybe 2019, you know, and the next Xbox after that, because they go along with this saying of the strongest console ever built, but for how long? You know, if PlayStation comes out with the stronger one next year, then that's out of the window in a year, right? Or 2 years.
And that's why content is important.
And which is why first party is important, because you can't always rely on just being the most powerful console forever. They kind of got screwed with PS4 and Xbox One because there's been a long gap where PlayStation has been the most powerful. Now you might start switching off every 2 or so years.
Yeah, we're the most powerful with asterisk for the next 2 years until
right.
You know, honestly, when you think about it, I wouldn't be surprised if the next Xbox and PlayStation 5 or whatever the next
are the same thing, right?
Like but launch exactly.
But here's
the same.
the thing about power, though, right? In the face of the most technically impressive third-party game versus a first-party studio working on one box and pushing it and making a great game, like God of War is going to look phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
So if you put God of War next to a third-party game in 4K, most people, right, aren't going to really see a big difference, or are going to say, man, that God of War game looks better. It's about the talent of the developer that you have creating content for you. That's always going to be the most important thing. It's great having a box that runs everyone else's games better. It absolutely is. I'm not discounting that. It's absolutely important, and it will absolutely have an impact. The people that are saying it won't are just upset about it. But in the face of great content, next to a first-party IP created by, say, Naughty Dog, or a talented developer, you know, like 343, those games always, to me anyway, pale in comparison.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Pale in comparison to.
I do agree.
I mean, if you're going to talk about power, right, you're going to say, look at this
yeah.
third-party game. Look at this third-party game in 4K, right, versus the third-party game checkerboard on the Pro, right? And then look at this first-party game created exclusively for the PlayStation, God of War, versus that third-party game in 4K. Is that third-party game in 4K that much of a weapon compared to that first-party studio creating that content?
Well, Sony would agree with you, and I don't know if Microsoft would, though.
Well, I don't. I'm not saying that you have to agree or disagree. I'm asking you: is it that big of a difference?
I would rather have.
You would rather. I mean, would you rather have a third-party game that is 60 frames a second versus the 30 frames a second version, that is also native 4K versus the 1680 version upscaled to 4K? Or would you rather have that big, exclusive, great-looking, because the developer's talented, pushing your system and your system alone to create an IP?
I want both.
I would rather.
It would be great,
both.
right?
Choice, I'll take the new IP. I'll take the new, because you're still going to play the third, like you said before. Those they're free games essentially on both platforms. It's like
Right.
you'll get
And
a
that's why
version of that
content is
game.
important. Right.
Well, it is, but maybe not. It wasn't so much at the beginning of this gen though, because the content disparity was somewhat in favor of Microsoft.
Well,
I mean, I know,
but that
I know
was
games
because
are
of the big
subjective.
stumble. Right. They took advantage
Right,
of
I
that
know
stumble.
games are a subjective experience.
Sure.
Not everybody's think that, but lately it's become apparent, and I know Scalebound's a huge gap in the release schedule.
Right.
It's just, I think for me, it's some of the unknowns. Like I don't even know when the next game Xbox is putting out. Like we're in 2017 in April, May basically, and it's when's the next game?
See, I don't like
no
that.
clue.
It was like that. Honestly, it was also like that last year too. I mean, after Quantum Break, we didn't know what the
No, but you knew Forza Horizon was
we
coming.
knew it was coming, but we didn't know we didn't have like dates on the other announced games or anything like that.
I mean, but I'm saying, like, even years previous, there were games that were announced for down the road.
Yeah.
Like at this point, we literally don't know anything for 2018. Whereas
Yeah,
last year, we knew games coming out for 2017.
It's unfortunate with the cancellations like Scalebound. I think they're trying to steer away from that, but I think that's just a necessarily evil. I want to know what's coming up. We don't, like you said, we don't even know release dates for anything for the end of this year, let alone past this year.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah, when does Crackdown release? Forza's not even announced yet. When does State of Decay release? It's like I want to know my future.
Sea of Thieves, oh my god, we got Rand calling for a 2018 release. He's asking for a 2018.
Yeah, because I want the game to be successful. I've had enough of playing and enjoying these great single player games that Xbox provides, and then just seeing them fail because nobody else buys them because of one reason or the other, maybe one being of release schedule, like a Sunset Overdrive. It's like, no, I want these games to be successful because Microsoft needs that, right? Like, I don't know if they could afford Sea of Thieves to be a disaster. Like, what I'm saying? Like, what happens if Sea of Thieves is a disaster? Say they release it at the end of the year, right? Say they release it with Scorpio and nobody buys it. Do they close Rare down? Because they spent so much money on the game, they can't afford to keep Rare open anymore.
Come out. I feel like it's supposed to. It has to come out. It's like a quarter one, quarter two game. It can't come out in like a four. It's not a fourth quarter caliber game to me.
No, and I agree with you, but it's like Xbox needs some sort of success for their own stable this gen. Look, and I know Gears and Halo will sell what they do and stuff, but they need a new IP to take off in a way that they haven't yet. Sony, Knack 2 exists, but I almost kind of see that as like them throwing fucking shade at Microsoft, being like, you can't get a sequel in any of your games. We're going to do a sequel to Knack 2. But,
they got Voodoo Vince out the door, right?
Well, yeah, and Voodoo Vince is a fine game, but I mean, but you look at
Justice next.
Granted, there are some PlayStation games that didn't do as well. The Order 1886, no sequel
Gravity
from
Rush
them.
2.
Gravity Rush 2, but at least there was a sequel to the first one.
Sure.
Until Dawn did well, and I think they got a VR game, and I think they're doing a sequel. Horizon Zero Dawn is like they let Guerrilla Games, who only made Killzone games, their primary multiplayer first-person shooter franchise, they let them spend 5 years making a third-person action open world game, and had the faith in them to see it along for those 5 years. And now they're rewarded.
Yeah, that makes
the difference between Sony and Microsoft.
Yeah, with Bungie being let go, even who is it? Playground Games letting their new IP that they're doing, not making that an exclusive. I really wish they would start doing that more often.
What, like
letting the good developers you have now, letting them take a chance at something different.
So you want to see what 343 could do outside of Halo, basically,
right? Or anyone. I mean, obviously the Coalition, it's kind of named for Gears, but even them, like, let them get a chance at something else, see what else they can do, and then you might end up with a situation like Naughty Dog, where they're juggling Uncharted and Last of Us now.
Yeah, well, that's what Naughty Dog seems to do, though. It's like they create these franchises, they move on, and then somebody else picks them up. But the problem is Microsoft doesn't have a studio on the caliber of Naughty Dog. It's just a fact. They don't.
Right, but it's Microsoft's fault that they don't. They have. I mean, listen, financial statements are out there, right, everywhere, all over Twitter. They've got money.
Well, true, but we don't know what Phil's how much money he has to work with, what his demands are, what his boss expects of him, and and things like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it's easy to talk about this stuff, sitting in our houses while they're dealing with things like budgets. But, one thing I always bring up is build your own studios. You don't necessarily need to buy a whole studio outright.
Sure.
Get
I mean,
the
why
talent.
not?
So my question
put it
is,
together in their own studio.
what was the point of like buying a studio like Mojang and the other studio that make like the Disney Xfinity amiibos? Like,
well, they didn't buy Studio Gobo. They have a partnership with Studio Gobo. And I like they made the play sets for Disney Infinity 1, 2, and 3 like a single play set for each. So their experience is on like a third-person action game, and I think if you look at their hiring, they are hiring for an open world or open AAA game. Maybe they're doing some sort of Microsoft IP. Maybe Microsoft saw that feedback they got about that canceled Halo Mega Blocks game, and are like, "Hey, you guys would be perfect for this. Make this game." Maybe Microsoft is getting into the toys to life thing, and they're going to try selling Halo Chief dolls to 35-year-old men. I mean, I don't know,
35-year-old men that will buy them.
I was just going to say, here's one that will buy one.
Because Gopher's in chat, and he buys all of those things.
I wish I was 35.
But no, I mean, it's like what Magic said earlier. Like, I would love, and I know I've had this conversation with Tim too, I would love for Microsoft to be like, and, including our vision of Xbox, we have decided to create a brand new studio full of top talent, and here's a studio, and here's a glimpse of what they're working on. I think that would quell a lot of people's fears. It's like, okay, we get it. Because Phil did mention during that IGN interview with Scalebound that, like, you would start seeing, like, some of the, like, he could do more things with the cancellation of Scalebound. And people were like, what are you talking about? It's a good thing. Because remember, on Twitter, he said, it's a good thing that game was canceled. And it's like, well, what do you mean it's a good? How's that a good thing? We don't get to play a game. So if like at E3 they'd be like, here's Scorpio, here's all this stuff, but here's this new studio we built to build these experiences and add Spoforio, I'd be happy with that.
Sure.
That would be like, all right, cool. A new studio pumping out new games, that'd be great,
Yeah, I want to see why these IPs had to be canceled. I want to see why. I want to see, where that capital went after these studios were canceled, because if these studios were making content for them and then they were canceled, I'm assuming then that money would be reinvested back into the Xbox to make content, right?
Yeah.
So I'd like to see where that went and what's being done. It
could also just be a matter of cutting their losses.
Sure, which is depressing.
Yeah, it is, but
yeah. So I mean, I didn't really. I literally thought I was only going to do this for 20 minutes, and then it's basically almost 2 hours now. So I figure I'd end it. But before we go, I'll give everybody a chance to shout themselves. Worry, you got any lasting thoughts, or you want?
Yeah, I guess I'll see you in another podcast 1.5 years, 2 years from now.
I guess so. Kid, let the people know where they can find you if they don't already know, and if you have any final thoughts on all this.
If you're just gonna come and dislike, don't bother looking for me. But
don't bother looking for Kid.
It's Kid Smooth. You can find me on YouTube. My name is Kid Smooth. I'm in the chat. But yeah, yep. That's pretty much it. I'm on YouTube and I'm on the Weapon Wheel podcast, and I'm still lobbying Microsoft on Twitter to get me into the Xbox E3 conference. So.
And you are the best spot.
And I am the best spot. I've been calming down because people are upset that I haven't been doing Rand's rants on my channel about about Xbox. So no, they're not too happy with me.
All right, and Magic, let the people know where they can find you at, or if you have any lasting or final thoughts on this whole stuff.
I'm just happy to join, man. It's interesting topics, E3 and the single player stuff. I'll be at E3 this year for my first time, so I'm hoping they bring the fire. I'm not trying to get spoiled beforehand.
If we're all in for bad news at E3, I'll buy everybody a round. We'll go to the nearest bar and we'll drink on it. So
don't worry, Magic, you'll get spoiled because you hang out with me every day.
Yeah. I'll have to stay away from Rand for about 2 months coming up here.
Shit. All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out in chat, and
thanks for having me.
See you again. Yeah, thanks for talking some video games and some Xbox stuff with me, and that's gonna be it for the show. And I'll see everybody later. Have a good one, guys.
See ya.